Hello, my exceptionally awesome viewers. There's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, and it's the concept of Nintendo porting Wii U games over to the Switch. As I've stated before, I think Nintendo's decision to do this has been wise thus far. You spend millions of dollars making a quality game and release it on a system that ends up underperforming, and that's a lot of lost potential. The Switch is in high demand and looking to have a good, if not great, lifetime of sales, so bringing titles like these to the system means more people get to experience them, there's just more to play on the Switch, and obviously Nintendo makes more money. It's a relatively small amount of effort for big potential returns. The question now is, how far will they go? Do they really just want to fill out this year and now they're done, or is this going to be a regular occurrence throughout the Switch's life? It may be too early to know exactly, but we can run through the Wii U's big titles and talk about what might or might not work on the Switch and decide what ports are likely. Let's get a big one out of the way first. This last E3, it sounded like a lot of folks were gunning for a port of Smash for Wii U on the Switch. And this is really tough because there are points both for and against such a port. A new Smash is an enormous undertaking. Nintendo works for ages making all the characters and modes and stages and just balancing everything out. Smash for Wii U performed as well as you could expect with such a small install base. 5 million units is good no matter who you are. Well, maybe not Rockstar. Anyway, but obviously it had the potential to do so much more. Smash for 3DS sold 8 million, and Brawl sold 13 million. One could argue that 3DS and Wii U make up one collective Smash Bros. 4, meaning a sales total closer to that of Brawl's, but I don't see it that way. Those are two different platforms and two games with a lot of differences, and if the Wii U had sold more, Smash for Wii U would have sold more, period. So with all the time they sunk into it and all the money it failed to make, plus the fact that two-player Smash on one Switch with Joy-Cons would be stupidly perfect, an enhanced port with all the DLC and maybe a few extra features a la Mario Kart 8 Deluxe would make all the sense in the world. But then on the other hand, that name. This isn't Smash Bros. 4, no matter how much we call it that. This isn't Smash Bros. Tussle. This is Smash Bros. for Wii U. And it feels a little silly to consider that the biggest reason why they wouldn't port it over, but it makes sense. They did the 4 thing for a reason. They wanted to ditch the names and establish that each Nintendo platform would be getting one. How do you make Smash Bros. for Wii U for Switch? How do you then later make a regular old Smash Bros. for Switch? The only answer would be to upend the whole name thing again. An enhanced port would have to just be called Smash Bros. 4 Deluxe or something, but then it wouldn't be entirely clear that it was the Wii U version, and some people might consider that false advertising. Plus, Nintendo might not even want more than one Smash on a system. They might prefer focusing everything on a single title so they don't end up splitting the player base a few years down the line and having to manage 2 different online infrastructures. Getting Smash on the Switch as soon as possible to drive those sales would be great, but I can't think of an easy way to get out of this whole packaging pickle. So my final call is a Smash port is doubtful. Though, hey, each system usually gets a Mario Kart, but if Nintendo is happy with 8 Deluxe and doesn't even plan on making an exclusive one for Switch, they could very well do the same thing with Smash. So technically it's on the table, even if I don't think it's super likely. But let's move on to something a little simpler. I'm of the opinion that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of the best 2D platformers ever made. I'm not even a huge fan of the genre, but this game, and only to a slightly lesser extent its predecessor, are masterpieces of level design and control like butter. Tropical Freeze only moved a fraction of the units Returns did though, so this seems like a very good contender for a port, especially considering that it didn't use the gamepad one single bit. So they wouldn't have to reconfigure a thing. I mean, Returns got an enhanced 3DS port, and I felt that having the game on a handheld just made it better, so we're in a similar situation here. Nintendo generally likes to add a few things though, and the 3DS one already added features that carried over to Tropical Freeze, so I'm not exactly sure what they would do with an enhanced Tropical Freeze, but you know what? I'd be just fine with a regular old port on Switch, no bells and whistles, especially if it was priced lower. I mean, just stick it on the eShop and slap a $30 price tag on it, and that's easy money. So here's an interesting one. Super Mario 3D World's simple pick-up-and-play nature feels like it would be right at home on the Switch. I mean, hand a friend a Joy-Con and boom, you're both playing. For this reason, before Odyssey was announced, I was like 90% sure we were gonna get a 3D World 2. But now that that's definitely not happening, at least not anytime soon, is a port in the cards? Well, Odyssey is kinda what's complicating things here. Nintendo's not gonna want to release another 3D Mario so close to it, port or no, as the sales of one might hurt the sales of the other. Doing it a few years from now to further fill out the library is certainly possible, though there are a handful of gamepad-specific functions that would have to be tweaked or simply removed, which of course would mean some redesign work, which can be costly. The game also sold decently on Wii U, so it's possible that they're not exactly motivated to try to make back money that they lost or something. So I'm gonna give Super Mario 3D World a solid solid maybe, though it wouldn't be for a good few years, and a full sequel made for the Switch might even be a little more likely. Speaking of Nintendo not wanting to cannibalize their own sales, there are a few other potential ports that are made less likely because of successors already in development for Switch. Xenoblade Chronicles X was a massive game that probably deserves a second life on the Switch, but Xenoblade 2 is already coming, so such an arrangement wouldn't make a lot of sense. I'm much more confident in a down-the-line port of X than I am of 3D World though, and in fact I think it might depend largely on the sales of Xenoblade 2. The series has never sold amazingly, but if 2 finds a good-sized audience, then I could definitely see X swooping in to fill the gap between titles. Pikmin 3, same thing. We know that Pikmin 4 is coming someday at least, and the Pikmin series has never sold so well that Nintendo is just scrambling to get it on every system possible to whip up some easy cash. If they were, we would have seen 1 or 2 sequels on the Wii, but we saw none. Seeing as we don't know when 4 is coming, they've been working on it a while, but that doesn't even necessarily mean it's been in active development this whole time. The only time I could see a Pikmin 3 port happening is soon. It would have to be within this next year, maybe announced during a big Nintendo Direct in January 2018 to release the following spring. Any later than that, and it could interfere with 4, which we can only assume and hope isn't too far off. Unless, of course, Pikmin 3 Deluxe comes with a level editor where you can share maps online, in which case they can take another 10 years on 4 for all I care, and in fact, I won't be needing any other Switch games, thank you very much. In the off chance we do get Pikmin 3 though, removing the gamepad elements wouldn't be hard at all. The map could just be brought up with a button instead of chilling down on the bottom screen. Keeping the pointer controls is iffy though. It sounds like the Joy-Con gyroscopes have a hard time staying calibrated without a sensor bar to refocus on, so stick controls might be the only way to go with that type of gameplay. Now, there are 3 games that could technically get the port treatment, but seeing as they've already been brought to 3DS, it's much less likely. Super Mario Maker, Hyrule Warriors, and Yoshi's Woolly World all have handheld equivalents, and of course Yoshi also falls into that has another game coming soon category. For that reason, I feel that Yoshi is definitely out of the question. It's had its time in the spotlight, it only makes sense to move on, and I'm pretty sure we can say the same thing for Hyrule Warriors as well. It was never like an extremely high-profile game to begin with, so 2 releases is probably where it's gonna stop. Better chances for a port than Woolly World, but not by much. Super Mario Maker, however, is another story. Sure, it got a 3DS version, but that version lacked the ability to share levels online, which many will argue was kinda the whole point. It still netted a few million sales, which is certainly impressive, but it just wasn't the full experience. Plus, Mario Maker is an extremely important game in my opinion. I've mentioned before how if the game had launched with the Wii U, I think the system might have gotten some extra momentum and we would have seen some very different numbers, but so late in the cycle it couldn't really make a big difference. Super Mario Maker could be big on the Switch, so a port is certainly possible, though I'm gonna make a prediction here. I think Nintendo will take the Splatoon 2 route on this one and release a sequel instead. I mean, there are still tons of assets from all the 2D Mario games they could throw in, like, you know, maybe slopes? Plus new features and all that, and maybe even a revamped community, seeing as Miiverse is going the way of the dodo. Now, the biggest problem with either a port or a sequel is that so far, to my knowledge, Nintendo hasn't released a game that requires the Switch to either be docked or undocked. Mario Maker obviously would use the touchscreen a great deal. Technically, they could just let you move everything with a cursor, like when you try to draw something in Splatoon 2 while docked, but it would be so cumbersome that I doubt a single soul would willingly choose that option. I certainly hope that such a little thing wouldn't single-handedly prevent the game from coming to the system, but we never really know what Nintendo's thinking, and they might not want to make such a touchscreen-heavy game at this point. If they do, though, my prediction is that Super Mario Maker 2 will be announced for the Switch at E3 2018. Next up, we've got 2 titles developed for the Wii U by Platinum Games. The first one, Bayonetta 2, is easy. It was a pretty big game with a lot of love put into it, and it sold okay on the Wii U, but it seems to me like the perfect little cult kind of title to be given another chance on more successful hardware. The Switch is also working to attract a wider range of age demographics, whereas Bayonetta was always one of the mature-rated oddballs on the otherwise tyke-targeted Wii U. Bayonetta 2 would be a great fit for the system, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it announced at any point in its lifetime. Then, of course, if that port does well, it opens up the door for another sequel. Wonderful 101, however, is a much tougher sell. Platinum also put a lot of love into that game, and a lot of very vocal fans tried their best to hype it up, but unfortunately, it was a pretty big flop sales-wise. Sometimes an underperforming game can be given new life on a new system, recouping lost development money and even turning a profit, but when the initial sales were too low, you're in a place where even a low-cost re-release might not be worth the risk. You have to ask yourself, was it bad timing or bad marketing, or were the low sales simply the result of the market speaking? Was it just a game that people didn't want to buy for whatever reason? With Wonderful 101, I can't say for sure, though I'm leaning on the let's give it another try side. I myself thought the game looked really great, but was put off by the demo because of the need to either draw on the the gamepad or fling the control sticks around in a particular manner to change abilities, and this just ruined it for me. It just plain made the game not fun. Pressing buttons to change would have made everything perfect. And I have to wonder how many other people downloaded that demo and thought the same thing. What if that was one big reason it sold so poorly, and making it easier to change abilities would open it up to more people? I don't know, might have just been me, but I think that, combined with a greater marketing effort from Nintendo and the simple fact that the fewer games on a system, the more attention each one gets when it launches, means that a Wonderful 101 port could end up being a good success if they do it relatively soon. It certainly is risky though, so I guess I'm glad it's up to Nintendo to make the final decision. I don't know what to do. Another pair of similar games, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker and Kirby and the Rainbow Curse. Both were budget titles, both made heavy use of the gamepad, and I really don't think either have much of a chance of being ported. Rainbow Curse is so dependent on the touchscreen that I'm just gonna boot it out of the running right now. It would basically have to be undocked all the time, and I really can't see Nintendo doing that. I personally wouldn't mind, but it is the Switch after all. From what I can tell, Captain Toad could potentially have the gamepad stuff yanked out of it, maybe, but it would take so much effort and change the game so much that it would probably be more worth it to just make a full sequel, if anything. So I'll give that one a probably not with a very possible sequel. Lastly, we've got one more pair of games, and the common thread they share this time is that they both featured some design choices that caused great big stinks. First, there's Paper Mario Color Splash, which, well, you know all the drama surrounding that game, so let's just not go into it. The reviews weren't terrible, they ended up ranging from okay to pretty good, and it sold decently, but not great for first-party Nintendo. It could enjoy better success on the Switch if, and only if, Nintendo were to tweak it a little bit. I honestly believe that changing the battle system just a little would increase the game's fun factor considerably, and that could lead to better reviews and more sales. It doesn't even use the gamepad in a meaningful way. The card selection could be done on the one screen using the controller, and the cutout sections could easily be altered to work without a touchpad. So I'm gonna give Color Splash a maybe as far as ports go. It really just depends on Nintendo's mindset. If I were in charge, obviously I would say no. It was kind of fun, it had lots of charm, it was good for a once through, but let's just call it done and leave it on the Wii U. If Nintendo still fully believes in their decisions though, and they have no intention whatsoever of going back to the original style, which I really suspect, then they should port it over. If they want to sell us on this new Paper Mario, they need to make the battle system less clunky and slow and give people another chance to try it out. And of course, give it a chance to make some more dough. The second game to cause a big stink on the Wii U, at least on this list, was, you guessed it, Star Fox Zero. The reviews were alright, and it sold pretty terribly, truth be told. Most of this was because of the divisive control scheme, which scared most gamers away from even trying it. I do believe it's at least possible to rip the game open and make it playable with one screen. You could make the third-person reticle, actually accurate, and then when you need to shoot something from a different angle, you could just tilt the right stick to change your viewpoint. The hacking stuff was all bottom screen, but they could easily fix that. Really, the question is any of that worth it? Is it worth putting so much time into making the game work on the Switch? My answer is no. Unlike Color Splash, there isn't enough to salvage here to make the time worth it. Nintendo tried something very, very different with the game, and it just did not work out the way they hoped. It's a sunken ship, and I say let it lie. Better to put all that effort into a new Star Fox game that addresses Zero's problems. That is, only if they're into making more Star Fox games ever again, because at this point I have my doubts. So there you have it. There are probably titles I missed, but those are the big ones. There are also a number of games to talk about from other past systems, but sadly, that's a discussion for another day. I'd love to hear what Wii U games you'd like to see ported to the Switch down in the comments, but before we go, it's time for an Arlo update, which I'm already renaming. Arlo Direct is a lot better, right? Yeah, I thought so. But anyway, if you happen to miss the end of my Splatoon 2 review, all the tweets I've done about it, and the Patreon blog where I mention it, Arlopalooza 2017 is in October. If you are in or close to Northern California, go check out the event page in the description and RSVP by September 7th if you want to come. We're gonna sit around and probably play a ton of Splatoon and Mario Kart, and it'll be a great time. That's all I've really got for this Arlo Direct though, so bye!